This project enabled me to turn $500 into $30,000. And over the next 6 minutes, I'm gonna show you exactly how I did it. People in real estate know exactly where I'm going with this. The bedroom. In all seriousness, adding a bedroom to your house is one of the fastest and easiest ways to increase the value, especially if you're adding additional square footage. For my subscribers, it's no secret that I'm building a rental in my basement, but for everybody new, that's exactly what I'm doing. The problem is that the room has no egress. And in order for a window to meet egress code, it has to meet these 3 requirements. The first requirement is that the opening needs to be large enough. It needs to be at least 5.7 square feet. The second requirement is it needs to be wide enough. It can't just be tall and skinny. So it needs to have a width of at least 20 inches. And that's the opening. When you open the window, is there 20 inches of room to get out? And the third requirement is a height requirement. It needs to be accessible for most people, so at max, it can be 44 inches off the ground. I apologize to everyone in a different country. These are the requirements for most places in America. But if you are in the US, you should still check your local codes because they might be different. If you enjoy mediocrity, then you're gonna like this video. All right, that's enough talking. Let's install an egress window.
So the first thing we need to tackle is getting the window at the proper height. Since the opening needs to be no more than 44 inches off the ground, that's actually about 12 inches below the surface of the soil. So the first thing I had to do was dig down 18 inches. So in order for this to drain properly, it needs to be sloped about 1 inch per foot away from the house. And once I got rid of the majority of the dirt, I could use a string line to make sure that I was following that. Now they sell string levels that you can attach to the strings, but I didn't have one, so I just used my 4-foot level and held it up as best I could. Now the next thing we need to do is build a retaining wall. So once I was satisfied with the slope, I then flattened everything out and then used a tamper and really compacted the soil as best as I could. And this will help prevent the wall from shifting over time. Next, I can move on to building the retaining wall. And this is honestly a pretty straightforward process. Just take your time and make sure that the bottom row is straight and level with each other. Next, I can pour some gravel behind the bricks. This is gonna help drain any water that gets behind the wall, because if not, that water has a potential to freeze, expand, and over time shift your wall. The second layer of the wall starts with a half brick, so I have to use a masonry chisel, and I'm scoring around the entire outside of the brick, and eventually it cracks in half. The remaining layers go down really fast because we don't have to worry about leveling anything out. I'm adding some construction adhesive between the 2 layers to help them stick together, and from here it's just continuing on up. Once I got to the 3rd layer, I then poured the remaining pea gravel behind the wall. Now you only need the gravel up to the 2nd row for proper drainage, and it can be dirt on top of that. So the next thing I'll do is backfill with some dirt. And I'm doing some of this before I put in that last row because it's going to be even more difficult once it goes in to get the dirt behind it. And the last thing that I did for the wall was replace the sod in some of those areas to make it look a little bit better. Unfortunately, this window had to go below the foundation wall on my house, so it meant that about a 2-foot section had to go. And this was arguably the second most unpleasant thing I did in the entire basement renovation. Only second to pouring a 100-foot walkway and a driveway slab. That was a miserable day. And that video will be coming out in just a few more weeks, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel so that you can see the rest of this basement build. So as you saw in the previous clip, I cut away the siding from the inside using a Sawzall, and then I went to Home Depot and rented a 14-inch concrete saw. And while I'm only playing a 5-second clip for you, I spent about 6 hours cutting out this slab. Unfortunately, I returned the saw before attempting to remove this slab from the opening, and believe me when I say I tried everything. I had to keep using a hammer drill to chip away at the edges until it finally broke loose. Okay, let me pause for a sec because I'm starting to get a little ahead of myself. When I built the retaining wall, it was October and it was nice weather, but by the time I actually got around to cutting out this window opening, it was late December and it was roughly 8 degrees here in Atlanta. Moral of the story being, I wanted this done ASAP and I did not stop to set up a camera to film. But all that I did was frame out the inside of the rough opening with some pressure treated lumber and then use flashing tape on the outside to help waterproof this window. To attach the pressure treated lumber to the concrete, I used a ram set and construction adhesive, and then I followed it up with some spray foam to get in all of the cracks. Okay, let's resume the video. Now that the rough open is framed out and flashed, we can go ahead and install the window. Once I set it in place, I just threw in a few nails on the outside and then called it good because I had a deadline to meet. By the time I got around to finishing this window on the outside, my tenants had already moved in and it was mid-February. Anyways, the next thing that I did was trace out what I needed to cut away for the brick mold to fit around the window. Then I loaded up a concrete blade into my circular saw so that I could cut my hardy board. Trust me, if you use a normal saw blade, it'll be the last time you use that blade. So after making all of these cuts, I used a multi-tool to really get into the corners and square them up and to make sure that I removed all of the material. Then I added some more nails in all of the remaining holes that I missed last year, and I did that with a palm nailer, which is now one of my favorite tools. That thing was fantastic. So before I tape and trim out this window, I wanted to get rid of the dirt and grime that had built up over the past couple months, so I just used some Clorox wipes and paper towels to get everything clean. Next, I used Tyvek tape all the way around the window to make sure that everything was as sealed up as it could be. Tyvek tape is primarily used for house wrap when you are doing the waterproofing layer on top of the sheathing and before the siding, and windows are the next step once you've done the house wrap, which is why we're using it here. So next I cut a piece of flashing and I fit that up before I put the brick mold on, and that's going to help divert the water over the top of the brick mold and stop it from going behind. Growing up, my stepfather was a roofer, and something that I learned from him is that it's not about waterproofing, it's actually about water diversion. So that piece of flashing is just diverting the water away. We do not want it behind the trim, we want it to flow on top and then to the ground and then drain away from the house. Installing this brick mold is fairly straightforward. I'm just getting it in place and then nailing it with a 16 gauge finish nailer. Now, as you can see, I haven't gotten rid of that slab of concrete. It's just sitting there on the side. I'm open to suggestions. That thing is way too heavy for one person to lift. So let me know in the comments what you guys think is the easiest way to get rid of that. To this day, it's still there, so I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say. Now, the final step before we are done with this is to caulk. So I'm caulking all around the edges and on the top, but do not caulk the bottom, because if water does get behind this brick mold, we want a place for it to escape. Even though this thing took over 3 months and caused enough stress to warrant a therapy session, this transformation was truly satisfying. Having this window down here not only allows me to have a rental, but it also adds another bedroom to my house, which increases the value. I love how this window cranks open to almost 90 degrees, and it has a 10-inch deep windowsill.
At this point, you probably have a couple questions. How does a window equal $30,000? If you want, you can perform a quick little Google search. You can find out that on average, adding one bedroom to your house increases its value by $30,000 to $50,000. For my subscribers that watched my most recent video, you know that I'm turning my basement into a rental. So in addition to this window adding value to my home, it's also gonna allow me to get monthly income from my tenant. Let's break down the cost of this project. The largest cost for this project was the casement window, and that came in at $379. The retaining wall only cost $100, and I only spent about 50 bucks on the brick mold and the caulking and some brad nails. In total, I came in at just over $500. I'm gonna have a link in the description to all of the materials and tools that I used. Now, this is only the second video in my basement renovation series where I show you guys how I'm building an apartment in my basement. Now, if you wanna see how this basement renovation turns out, you're gonna have to subscribe to my channel. I hate to break it to you, so just hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell notification, and that's gonna let you know when I post new videos, which I will be posting every Wednesday. I guess I'm supposed to say my name, so I'm Clayton, the Weekend Builder. Just keep that name recognition, right? Face, remember my face? Thank you for your time and subscribing to my channel. I'm just gonna assume you did it. If you wanna see how I framed the basement, go ahead and click right here. I go really in depth. And if you wanna see the next video, I don't even know what it is yet, but there'll be a title, so you can just kind of guess. If you wanna watch it, just click it. Yeah, you know what? I think I'll just keep you guys here long enough until it automatically sends you to my next video. That happens, right? Yeah, okay, just do nothing. You know what? Don't click on the next video, just